I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. My name is Mason. I'm the head of community at Blueprint AI. As many of you know, Blueprint provides an AI assistant for therapists to automate documentation and provide clinical insights before and after every session. We're also building an AI-assisted EHR as well. I'll be your host and moderator of today's panel, and I couldn't be more excited to welcome you and our panelists to a discussion that I think you'll find both practical and thought-provoking. Today's event marks the launch of our new community for mental health professionals. In my role as Blueprint's community manager, I spent countless hours over the last several months in direct conversation with clinicians to hear directly from you about what you want to see in a new kind of therapist community. The result is that we're co-creating a trusted space for mental health professionals to connect, share insights, and support one another. This community reflects what you told us you needed most: a safe space for case consultations, referrals, practical wisdom, and connection that makes the day-to-day doing this work feel a little less isolating. So the community is officially launching in less than an hour, and I'll be sharing a lot more details on that later. And to honor the grand opening of the community, we wanted to address a topic that we know is top of mind for a lot of mental health professionals: AI in therapy. AI and AI in therapy isn't monolithic. There's a range of uses of AI in the context of mental health: AI assistants, champions, chatbots, AI therapists. There's AI used directly by clients, and there's AI used by clinicians. There's AI for therapists that support licensed professionals like many of you. And there's AI therapists, which try to replicate therapeutic conversations and intervention. So today's topic is both vast and deep. It's nuanced and complex. And it's clear from the number of attendees, I think we're about at 250 already, just how timely and important this topic is. From AI therapists to policy debates that could reshape the profession, change is happening in real time and it's moving fast. The stakes are high. Decisions made in the coming months could define the profession for years to come. And thankfully, we're joined by some of the country's most esteemed leaders in clinical care, digital health, and public policy. Today, our panelists will be tackling one of the most urgent questions in mental health: where's the line between AI that helps and AI that harms? So we'll spend the next 30 minutes in discussion with our panelists. We'll then open the floor to our audience, to you all, for a short interactive session. We'll close with about 10 minutes focused on how you can take action related to this topic. The webinar will be recorded, so fear not if you have to scoot out a little bit early. Of course, encourage you to stay for the entire hour if you can. We have a wonderful presentation prepared for you today. Without further ado, it's my honor to introduce our first three panelists today. So please join me in welcoming them. Feel free to add a welcome in the chat or any emoji reactions. Our first panelist is Dr. Jessica Jackson, who's a licensed psychologist, the Vice President of Alliance Development at Mental Health America, and the chair of the American Psychology Association's Mental Health Technology Advisory Committee. With over a decade of experience across startups, hospitals, nonprofits, and even the UN, her work focuses on breaking down barriers to care through inclusive tech-enabled solutions. Next is Dr. Rachel Wood, who has a PhD in cyberpsychology, is a licensed counselor and therapist educator. She speaks fluently about mental health and the future of synthetic relationships. Dr. Wood enjoys her work as a speaker, workshop facilitator, therapist trainer, and strategic advisor. Dr. Wood is also the founder of AI Mental Health Collective, a community of therapists navigating the impact of AI in practice and in society. Our third panelist is Dr. David Cooper, who's the Executive Director of Therapists in Tech, the largest community of clinicians working in digital mental health. a clinical psychologist, and also a member of the APA's Mental Health Technology Advisory Committee. He's helped top US hospitals and major organizations like the Department of Defense and the FDA shape their digital health strategies. So good to have you three here. We have one more panelist joining us later on in the session, but thank you for being here. Couldn't be more excited. So let's dive in. I want to start by adding a bit more texture to my brief introduction about the various uses of AI in therapy. I mentioned before there are AI assistants, companions, chatbots, AI therapists for use both by clients and clinicians, but I think we can do a little bit more to paint the picture and add some detail here. Dave, do you want to kick us off and give us a sense of the various ways you see AI being used in therapy today? Any trends you're seeing or examples that are particularly illuminating?
Yeah, absolutely, Mason. I think I'll split it into kind of two categories. There's like the clinical side, stuff dealing with between you and the patient. Then there's sort of the back of house administrative side, stuff dealing maybe with you or just with the business. Um, on the administrative side, I think that's where we see a lot of really great tools that I think are beneficial for therapists, or certainly the less controversial tools, right? Things like the stuff Blueprint is billing to help you with the EHR, help you with note taking, help you with all the stuff that's not why you got to be a clinician, right? It's part and parcel of running the business, but it's not what you enjoy. Um, I've seen people use AI for working with insurance companies and writing those pre-authorization letters. Um, Using vibe coding to build up tools for your own back of house office stuff. Like, right, we all used to make those Excel spreadsheets. Like now you can just code up your own software solution to do it. Um, and there's companies taking things like the notes and turning it into um, therapist support post session, right? Like, typically we have those supervision sessions maybe like once a month if we're lucky, or if we're working out on our
Mm,
own, we have to find those relationships. Now you can get a little bit of that with therapy, with AI to say, hey, this is how you did post session. Um, on the clinical side, yeah, it's just exploding between chatbots in between sessions, things that'll make a podcast out of your, notes for patients. I think that's where we have to be a little bit more cautious. But again, I see a lot of good there too. Um, right, we need to move beyond the photocopied handouts that been, here you go, or here's that PDF, right? Like, so how do we help patients engage with the treatment that we're doing in a way that works with the 21st century?
super helpful and really helpful distinction between the administrative and the clinical, the less dangerous and maybe the more cautious on the latter. Moving beyond the paper copied handouts, you want to tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing on that clinical side that is inspiring, is
Yeah. Yeah, I think so again, I think there's new ways of interacting with people. I love when, you can take your notes and turn that into a handout for a patient. Like then the patient has a note as well, something to, so it's not just their remembrance of what we talked about. You can do homework and check in on patients between sessions. Um, a lot of, I think, more of the beneficial side of AI is using it as a journaling tool, right? It can be a very smart journal. And
mm,
so we can write prompts for our patients to be like, hey, discuss this topic. Like, hey, we talked about X, discuss it with the AI if you want to. Um, I think that's also where we see a lot of therapists having problems, right? I know there's a pretty hefty debate online about people using ChatGPT as a therapist, not only in lieu of therapy, but also, working with a therapist. Some therapists are like, great, it's a fun journaling tool. I welcome and accept it. Some therapists are like, I wouldn't want you seeing another therapist at a same time. So why would I want you using ChatGPT? I don't think we have a good answer or consensus on that. So it's really up to individual folks as these things come up.
yeah, and we'll get to ChatGPT. I hope we do. One of the prominent uses of ChatGPT now is in mental health for better and for worse,
Hmm.
especially related to HIPAA compliance, and we'll certainly get to those risks. Dr. Jackson, would love to hear from you on the same question about the range of uses of AI in therapy. I know you don't represent or can't speak for the APA, but curious about your perspective, maybe weaving in theirs about the types of AI in therapy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and Dr. Cooper's also on the committee, so feel free to chime in. Within the committee, we have people who are doing research, people who are doing clinical practice, who are doing research on clinical practice. We even had a student, like there's a big mix. And so we've had a lot of discussions about the ways that AI can be used. And I think the thing that has surfaced the most for us is it really depends on your setting. And
Mm,
unfortunately, when I see a lot of like op-eds or even research papers, they're very focused often on private practice or hospital, and not thinking about multiple other uses. So, for example, I have a private practice. In my private practice, I might think about things like note taking as a prominent AI use. I do get concerned about things like chatbots and things, but I've also worked in an inpatient and emergency room setting. And I think that people forget the ways that having some sort of AI consultant can be helpful, right? Often, especially in an emergency room setting, there's a whole lot going on at once. You have a very short window to make a decision about whether somebody is able to stay in the hospital or not, or where they need to go. And it can be really difficult when you don't have a lot of records. So if you're trying to diagnose something like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or something like that with very little information, it's hard. You're not seeing all the cycles or all the symptoms in that 20 to 30 minutes that you have with someone. And so I think leveraging things that are helpful for diagnostic can be useful. And I think people are trying to build some of those, especially specifically within hospital systems. So I'm not talking about using a general foundational model or LLM, but something that was tailored for your hospital or clinic based on data can really help people to get faster care, can get a clear diagnosis, especially for people who have multiple diagnoses. It's something I feel like I don't hear enough people talking about, but we often talk about such things in a monolith in mental health. It is rare that I've had someone that I've seen that's just coming in for just depression and there's nothing else
mm,
involved. So when you're trying to sort through all of that, and I think the thing, quiet as it's kept, we don't always like to say the quiet things out loud. We don't like to always consult with all of our colleagues. There are some people we would not trust, or we don't value their opinion in the same way. We don't think like them. And so I have seen people who just don't consult, and that can be dangerous. So I think leveraging AI, and there are people who are building those tools and using them as consulting. I've seen that. And then I think the thing that we've seen most recently for everyone is really thinking about chatbot use. And I do think that there's a place for chatbot use with guardrails and regulatory guidelines. Because I think the reality is, it doesn't matter how many therapists we have, we do not have enough people to see everyone, and everyone doesn't need therapy. And so allowing technology to support that does not necessarily put us out of business. Someone coming in, because they're having difficulty sleep, they don't necessarily need talk therapy for 12 sessions to improve their sleep. So what are ways that
mm,
we can think through? And so, the thing that I encourage people to think about when we're talking about AI is really to reimagine it. We're really trying to make AI tools fit into the current way we think about mental health. And it's like, well, what could you do? Like really reimagining your role leveraging technology if you had some sort of assistive technology, whether it's back of house notes or diagnostic or supporting, a patient creating documents.
And I'll just quickly chime in to say, and from the committee, I think a biggest part of this is just getting psychologists to use these tools, to try AI, right?
mm,
We come from a profession where we don't do anything. We're very trained. You don't do anything until you are certified to use it and you've taken classes. And this isn't like that. This is a tool that is moving so quickly. And so a big part of I think what Jessica and I and the rest of the community do is just try it. Try Blueprint's AI tool. Try it in safe spaces. Try, the best thing about AI is AI will teach you how to use AI. Go to ChatGPT and Claude and say, I'm a psychologist. I'm in private practice. I'm in a university counseling center. What kinds of things should I responsibly use you for, and how can I do that?
Yeah, I love the framing, like the positioning of reimagining your role with this new tool, but multiple tools as we've established here. And Dr. Jackson, I love your addition. I was talking about client-facing tools, clinician-facing tools, and like the various types of tools, but your addition of this setting, I think, is extremely important and really helpful as well. So thank you for clarifying that. I want to turn to some of the presenting risks now and explore the risks that AI poses to clients and to therapists today. Dr. Wood, I know you think a lot about this distinction in your work, clients and clinicians. Would love to turn it to you to share your thoughts about risks as it relates to both the groups of people.
Yeah, thank you, Mason. So I look at this in the clinician side and the client side. So when we start over in the clinician side, we need to remember that we are in nascent stages with AI right now. We are at the beginning of the beginning of the beginning. So right now we are still working through building AI that is safe, that has ethical guardrails, all these things that everyone here is going to champion, because we want that. We want it created safely. And in the meantime, while we are getting better at that, we need to be mindful of the fact that AI can hallucinate, which is kind of this fancy term for make stuff up. And so when we are using AI, whether in maybe a psychoeducational setting where we're creating different things for our clients, or we're reviewing a note summarization, I highly recommend you always review your note summarization. So this is a tool to assist you, not a tool to completely remove it from you. So when you're reviewing this, you want to be looking if there was anything in there that is just flat out wrong. There are case studies of hallucinations within AI transcription, particularly in hospitals. Also, we want to be aware of something really important called algorithmic bias, which essentially is that we as clinicians are masterful at context. Think about all the context that you hold in your mind while you're sitting with a client, the cultural nuance, the safety, the family of origin, the theoretical orientation, all these things. AI is not quite good at that yet. It's getting there. So you want to be mindful of the bias that can come in when you're reading through like a note summarization that could be missing what the client said. For example, here's a practical example, Mason. You're sitting with a client who maybe is showing some emotional distress, but because of their culture, you realize they're maybe showing a lot of emotional distress, but the AI may be reading it as not much emotional distress. Little nuances like this are really important because we have a place to advocate. As trained clinicians, we get to advocate for these AI, systems to be developed better, and to be able to come back and say, hey, I've been reading my notes and this part is off on a consistent basis. And so let's create a positive feedback loop here in which we are making this better. So that's clinician side. Data privacy concerns, I don't want to forget that. That's there too. Okay, let's look over at the client side. This is bigger than you think it is. Everybody here, if you think it's big, it's actually bigger than you think. And what I mean by that is there are millions, almost billions of people who are turning to AI for emotional support. So here is what I recommend when people ask me this as the first easy step. In your intake assessment, I think it will soon become standard that we begin asking this question: what role, if any, does AI play in the emotional support system of your life? So again, what role, if any, does AI play in the emotional support system of your life? Slide that into your intake. I mean, we're already asking about their family, their friends, their cultural, their hobbies, their groups, their spiritual support systems. We get a lay of the land with our clients about this. And I think you will be surprised at how many people will respond with their usage of AI as emotional support. Now, what this opens the door to is a number of things. How heavy is their usage? Is there a heavy AI dependency going on? Is there an over reliance or dependence? Or Is it at a place where you can maybe bring in the AI chat threads and enlist them in a way that helps? Dr. Cooper mentioned this, tailoring prompts, doing things that enlist the AI to help in the therapeutic process. I could go on, but I'll pause there in case you want me to stop, Mason.
This is amazing. Thank you so much. I love the breakdown between the two parties, and what I heard from the clinician side, a few things. Data privacy went over quickly, hallucinations, extremely important. And what stands out to me is algorithmic bias and the what could be lost, like the cultural reflexivity, the cultural humility that could be lost that you're trained for, that, as you said, you can gather and are trained to gather, that these tools may not quite have developed as much at this point, at least. And on the client side, I love the statement that it's bigger than you think it is. It really kind of sets the tone for the scale of this degree of change. Dr. Cooper, Dr. Jackson, do you have anything you want to add on the risks front? I'm going to turn to you to hear about risks in the future, 1 or 2 or 3 years down the road, but also anything that you're seeing as risks now.
The only thing I would add to what Dr. Wood said, which I absolutely agree with the question that she stated about if any, like what if any use that AI has in a client's life. I feel like there's too many therapists who don't ask, and it's the same as it's asking if you've been to therapy before, because we use therapy language, and there are many people who may not consider anything that they're doing with AI therapy. So if you just ask that question, you will miss them. They might think, oh, I'm using it to do recipes, I'm using it for work, but there might be slipping in other questions and they don't actually consider it therapy. Right? I think one of the current risks to be mindful of is how we are talking about AI with our clients. I mean, I think there's a lot of risk. We clearly can't go into all of it today for the panel, but when we're hesitant and fearful, we communicate that. And what happens is clients then won't disclose. So there's a whole lot of information you could be missing out because of the attitude that you're sharing about it. It's the same thing as if you treated it like substance use, right? If you communicate that you think it should be abstinence only, no one should be using it, they're not going to tell you. And they may be using something like alcohol every day, but they're concerned about telling you. And I think that that is a risk because if you look at social media, I don't have a TikTok account, but this is one of the times I wish that I did was I saw all these videos of people talking about that ChatGPT is their therapist. And I was like, oh no, because there's no HIPAA covering any of that. And in fact, Sam Altman has said that they're not covered. So not just ChatGPT, I don't want to just beat up on them. None of the chatbots currently are covered. So when you are sharing information, when your clients are sharing information, they don't recognize that it's being stored somewhere. It could come back. And I give the example of in therapy, if somebody's telling me about their husband and like, I could kill him. I can look and assess you don't actually want to kill your husband. You're very just frustrated in the moment. Typing it in and it saves somewhere, and let's say, heaven forbid, something happened to your husband, it is now somewhere saved that you literally said, I want to kill him. And there's no context or nuance at all a part of that. And so that is actually a risk because people are sharing all of these deep, dark things, thinking it is like a therapist, and there's no confidentiality, there's nothing protecting it currently. And the other piece is they're literally just getting mirror feedback. I think that's a misconception of therapy. People are like, oh, it's just giving me something. Yes, it's giving you exactly what you told it. It doesn't know anything else about you. So in therapy, I'm able to look at your facial expressions. I can ask some questions. I might get context from things that you've shared and add that in. It's literally mirroring back to you what you tell it. And I don't know about y'all, but if I'm talking to a computer, I'm not always necessarily saying everything is right. Even if I'm talking to a human and I'm telling my side of the story of an argument, I'm focused on my side. I don't really care about their side or perspective. So in a therapeutic way, that's not helpful. So that is one of the bigger risks with AI, specifically to chatbots, is a lack of confidentiality in HIPAA and any other healthcare regulation, but also that it's literally actually not therapy, even though there's this trend of people calling it therapy.
Yeah, I've
Super
seen too
helpful.
many true crime things to know that's going to end well, Jessica. So here's how I think about all this. I am sadly old enough to remember the advent of the internet, to have used the internet before browsers, before like dial-up, right? Like I am that old. I see a lot of parallels between what's happening with AI and what happened with the internet in terms of how quickly it's going to change the way we do things in society. Except in the case of the internet, we had about like 15 years to adapt to that. And with AI, a lot of this stuff is happening. ChatGPT, like ChatGPT, 2022, right, gang? Like this, we forget how quickly all this stuff has come up and how quickly it's all changing. It is hard for me, and I think the rest of the panelists or anybody interested in AI just to keep pace with everything coming out and all the implications for it. So I say that because I think my question, my prediction for the future depends on what happens when if psychologists don't engage, right? If you don't engage through your local organizations, through putting your money towards companies who are doing it responsibly, towards understanding how this stuff works, if that doesn't happen, it's going to be a repeat of EHRs, of everything else that
Mm,
happens to psychologists rather than psychologists and therapists having a seat at the table, right? Mental people on the front lines of mental health need to have a seat at the table when this stuff is getting decided and how it's implemented. Otherwise, I do worry about a future where we go back to the 1950s and in-person therapy is only available for wealthy people because Medicare, lower SES folks, well, you got to do AI therapy first and you've got to fail that before we'll pay for you doing actual therapy. That's where, and we'll get into it later, that's where things like stuff in Illinois comes out and legislating and being active for shaping the future that we want comes into play where AI on the good side and on the positive side, the way I like to tell people is imagine if everybody had an assistant. Imagine if you had a personal assistant who was infinitely smart and infinitely capable, who could translate things, who could make appointments, who could, be that partner. Like that's going to change how we do everything is everybody gets a free assistant. Like that's going to be really cool. Jessica, you had one more thing. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
I was just going to add, I was just looking in the chat, and I think it's a great opportunity when I was saying about reimagine. One of the questions I keep saying is about note taking, and we think about, we're very much well aware of risk and note taking. We don't want somebody just typing our notes and we sign them, right? It's also a great learning tool. I think one of the things as
mm,
therapists, especially once we're licensed, we forget that we do things a lot the same way. You don't have to all raise your hands at once, but how many of you have a note template that you don't deviate from once you have it doing your notes? You just fill it in for each client. Sometimes, even with students, it's also about training. Have you ever compared your notes you take to a note taker to see what you might be missing because you've been doing notes for 10 years and you've trained your ear to only listen for certain things? That's what I mean by reimagine, is it doesn't need to replace your note taking, but it is a gut check. Like, let me try my notes. You might realize, oh, there's things that I don't even capture because my ear hasn't been trained in that way. Even for students, like when they compare their notes, it's like, here's a note you wrote, here's a note that the AI note taker took of your session. Now let's talk about things that we could have missed, maybe that you did capture. It's a great way to think about training versus I don't want people to lose a clinical skill. There are clinical skills that we lose anyway once we're licensed because we do it the same way everywhere we go, or we work in a clinic that only allows us to do notes a certain way. So that's just, I wanted to highlight that as a way when we think about the risk, also think about ways that, to Dr. Cooper's point, we can take some control of how we leverage it and use it in our field because we understand it better.
amazing example of the reimagination of the role and touches on Dr. Cooper's point about having some type of solution for case consultations as well. Someone to imbue a new perspective that you may not have been aware of over the last X number of years since starting in the field. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Dr. Wood, anything you want to add on risks now or into the future?
Yes, thank you. All these thoughts continuing in my head. I'm like, we could all keep going for hours and hours about this. So I'm kind of keen on saying that while some are optimizing their workflows with AI, others are bonding with it. And this is happening at a deep level. Like this is, I like to say, shifting the relational bedrock of society. So when we look, if I can go in for a moment on the client side to things like artificial companions, if we can all go there for a second, these are tools that are specifically built, many of them for romantic uses, kind of to be an AI boyfriend, girlfriend, to be, a partner in that realm. So this also, if you are not aware of it, is a very big deal. One of the platforms, Character AI, has 20 million monthly users. 20 million monthly users, and over half of them are under the age of 24. So this is a really widespread thing. It's also kind of a norm to have, in some areas, a real live partner or boyfriend or girlfriend, and then an AI one. And so we're seeing, also, if you have a client talking about a partner, you may want to lean in to see if it's a real partner or if it's an AI. I've also talked with many clinicians who have been in that spot, even now. So I think that's another part for us to be worried about when we go into this. We're of course seeing lawsuits, kind of a landmark lawsuit that's been going on since November of 2024, which is against Character AI, which is Google, and their kind of the chat bots intertwining with the death by suicide of a 14-year-old boy in Florida. So we're kind of seeing some very interesting precedents being set in terms of how this is being handled. But also, I just think that the bonding is a big thing that is happening with clients right now. So that's what I would add there, Mason.
Super helpful. I want to turn to one more risk before we start talking about a little bit more about the distinction between promising and harmful uses. And this is on the clinician side. We've heard a lot at Blueprint and in mass media about the risk of job displacement from AI therapists specifically. Do any of you have a specific stance or perspective on that specifically?
I will say, I think one of the things that the committee we've talked about, I think it's a both and. Of course, I cannot see in the future, but if I was a betting woman, I would say it's a both and, right? I cannot necessarily see AI fully replacing therapists. I could see it replacing therapists who use AI, replacing therapists who do not. And the reason that I say that is because it's one of the things that it feels new for us, but AI has been around for a very long time. If you pick up your iPhone, like it's a part of the growing technology. So it would be the same as people who don't use EHRs, who only type their notes and then save it and lock it in Microsoft Word, which there are people who still do that. There's a whole lot of things that you can't do when you're doing billing or when you're trying to do an audit. There's a lot of things that you can't do if you're just locking your notes in a Microsoft Word on your computer versus using an EHR. So I think that we add a lot of meaning because we're like, it's AI, but at the end of the day, it's still just technology. And for therapists who are not using it, eventually it's going to make your job difficult because technology that you do use may become obsolete because they have replaced it. So I think taking a long time to engage in that way, it will also impact how you're connecting with clients. To Dr. Wood's point, if people are bonding with it and that's something that you've stayed all the way away from because you don't believe in AI or you don't think it should, you're going to miss things. What about people who are using AI as the only source of connection they have with these characters or things, and you don't ever ask about that because you are saying, I'm staying away from it. So I think that therapists who do not engage with the technology have an understanding of it, could potentially be replaced with people who do, because it's going to impact the way that we work across the board, whether you want it to or not. There's all these other factors that are a part of the healthcare and mental health care ecosystem that have embraced it.
And just to quickly,
yeah.
I was just going to double tap on what Jessica said too, of like thinking about it. If I were in private practice, the thing I would take away from this is how is not only my work going to change, but how could my patient makeup change, right? These things are moving so quickly. Are they as good as a therapist now? Probably not. Is there a near-term future where they're as good as maybe a first or second year graduate and it does evidence-based therapy and measurement-based care and all the things that people want to see, yeah, I could see that. It's moving that quickly. So what happens when the worried well population dips out of therapy and goes for an AI chatbot? What are you left with? How does my therapeutic practice and client makeup change, given that this could treat it not as an immediate risk, but I wouldn't be like it's never going to happen. I would think about that.
And what I would add there, and I love what Dr. Jackson said about it doesn't really matter if you're for or against AI. That's a non-issue because it's already in your practice. And so becoming, informed about it in terms of your question, Mason, about it replacing therapists, I think one potential reframe here is we really have a new presenting issue. We are seeing edge cases of AI psychosis. We are seeing, I'm working with clinicians, and I'm sure everyone on the panel is, who are seeing clients with AI psychosis. Pretty much in this thing. And so we are going to see more of that. Not that everybody is headed that way, and I'm not alarmist in that way, but there are edge cases here. And then there are, a spectrum. We need to be having some shared language and shared understanding of what an AI attachment spectrum is and what it looks like. So for us, we actually, as clinicians, are going to have more clients come to us who are actually needing some help through some of this. And there's also research showing that people who are using some of these chat bots, once they get initial experience of being able to disclose a little bit, they actually realize, I can say this out loud. It's okay to say these hard things out loud, so I can go find a real therapist and do the work. So it actually can be an inroad to get people into therapy who maybe were hesitant or not wanting to do it. So there's a lot of opportunity and possibilities here.
That's amazing. This is exactly the type of nuance I was hoping would come out of the conversation. New presenting issues, AI as a tool in different settings, like an EHR, an incredibly helpful piece of technology, love it or hate it as it is, but like contemporary, and AI will fit that bill in a similar way. Thank you all so much. I want to turn it over to the audience now for a brief few minutes. We want to hear from you what you think the lines are between the good, the bad, and the dangerous. So dust off your keyboard, come to the chat. It's open for everyone. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to ask just 3 questions and encourage you to submit your responses directly into the chat. So to begin, the first is, I'm curious to know what applications of AI you think are generally good and should be widely available now for clinicians and or clients. So this is your opportunity as the audience to draw the lines with the panelists on the good, the bad, and the dangerous, starting with the good. Applications of AI you think are generally good and should be widely available now for clinicians and clients. Rural areas, shortage of mental health clinicians, and panelists, feel free to remark on anything you're seeing that comes through that catches your eye.
One of the things that stood out to me in the chat is I love that everyone is sharing the breadth of where we are. I think that's the other almost risk, is we treat the mental health field like a monolith, and everyone's at different stages. So even when somebody is super experienced and can tell you the intricacies of a foundational model, there is still someone who is saying, I don't know what this is. And that impacts the whole field, right? When you think about the ecosystem of mental health. So I love that people are sharing all these different ways so that people can see we're not a monolith when it comes to mental health. There's some people comfortable with note taking, some people not. Some people comfortable with chatbots, some people not. Some people are saying, I'm not comfortable with AI at all. And other people are saying, I built my own model using vibe coding to support the back end of my practice, right? Like there's such a breadth. And I think that's one of the things we can take away from the chat when we're saying, I've seen some comments like, we should be moving past this, or this isn't really the debate. It is for some people. And I think when you leave people behind, that's how the field as a whole gets very fragmented when it comes to making sure we're providing quality care.
Great point. I had introduced AI as not a monolith, but the mental health field as not a monolith also is another great addition. Dr. Cooper, go ahead.
No, I was just going to quickly comment. A lot of folks asking, like, how do I get started? What are good use cases? I know some things I've done is take de-identified raw score data from assessments, drop it into ChatGPT, tell me about this person to see how it writes notes or how it thinks about these things. Took an old case conceptualization from grad school and was like, what did I miss? Think about this in an interfamily systems context, or something that I'm not necessarily trained in or isn't my specialty, but just to help me think different about the patient or where they're coming from. Again, none of this stuff is HIPAA, aside from Blueprint, which is fantastic. None of this stuff is necessarily HIPAA compliant. So de-identify things, right? Like we're all used to that. We're all used to taking out names and identifying features, but put in some of the things or ask it like, hey, I've got a person who does X, Y, and Z. What kind of things can we do as far as worksheets? Ask it how to use it.
Amazing. Yeah, kind of meta there. I'm gonna move on in the chat, ask the audience our second of three questions. What manifestations of AI should be banned or illegal? This is in the far out category, maybe the dangerous side of the conversation. What manifestations or applications of AI should be banned or illegal? And maybe the answer is none. Maybe it's a little more nuanced than that. Albert Wong, the question is for who? Love that question. AI doing therapy, AI therapists. And then I'll move us into the third of three questions. You probably guessed this is getting into the gray area. What versions of AI should be allowed but controlled or regulated? There's probably a lot more here in this messy middle, the gray, the nuance. Banned for who and why? I love that clarification question as well. It's fascinating to see your contributions, and we'll be compiling this information and continuing the conversation in the community starting immediately after today's webinar. If you have other thoughts, please add them here and then join us in the community after to keep it going. One of the tools in the toolbox, of course, for controlling the use of AI in mental health is regulation. And as you've all likely seen by now, legislative action is already underway. We're extremely fortunate to have with us today as our final speaker, Kyle Hillman, who's the legislative director for the Illinois chapter of NASW. Kyle is now in his 21st year with the National Association of Social Workers and is a veteran policy strategist and association leader. He's been in the driver's seat for much of the legislative activity, making headlines lately, advancing legislation that's defining the future of mental health profession through bold, member-driven advocacy. Kyle, thank you so much for being here. What a privilege and honor to have you. You truly are the person behind the scenes. Tell us the story. We have 5 or so minutes. Would love to hear a quick version of the story.
Yeah.
About the recent bill passed in Illinois, what it says about AI therapists specifically, and why it was important to pass this bill.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this opportunity to kind of chat with some folks. I'll tell you, it's all about safety. We were hearing some really horror stories that were coming out of our members, telling us about individuals that were using AI to try to validate their therapy, to try to replace their therapy, and some of the things that the AI chatbots were saying to these individuals. And we started to take a look at it from a regulatory perspective of saying, what are the controls for this? How are these things regulated? How are these things able to replicate, and in some places even advertise that they are clinical therapy? And it really came down to the purpose of regulation, the public safety, the very fact that we have licensure for a very, very good reason, and how do we bring some of these controls back in on these AI. And another piece that we were looking at too was just the data. And I think the panelists talked about it in length, and it was really great. But the data was the key piece too, right? Like, and something we're going to continue to struggle with, which is how do how do we make sure that the information that people are sharing is treated at the same level that we have to treat medical records, that we have to treat individual information. And so we talked to our regulatory board, we talked to tech companies, we talked to, just about everybody that we could, bend an ear. And we settled with the draft that we had. And I want to stress, like every legislation, this is a breathing document. It's going to have to be changed. It's going to have to be modified. Things are just moving so quickly. Like I've already started a running list of things that I'm going to have to add to it. But at its core, what it does is it basically says that you have to be a clinical therapist licensed in the state of Illinois to provide clinical therapy, period. And I think that defining that line and drawing that line is critically important for our patients, for the profession, for Illinois. We were actually really lucky. Nevada actually took the language from Illinois, actually passed it, and the governor signed it before Illinois' governor. So it was kind of this they kind of leapfrog this. But the bill does a really important thing that I wanted to stress is that it identifies that there is a place for AI. There is a blue ocean for AI companies. There's a wonderful opportunity for therapists to use AI to improve their practice, to improve how they deliver therapy, how they run the back end, but also like how they work with their clients. But it does clearly define the role that AI shouldn't be in the therapist chair. I will
very well.
Yeah, go ahead.
As I say, very well said. I think you said the bill says you have to be a clinical therapist to provide clinical therapy, period. That's really puts a really fine point on an issue I know a lot of folks are thinking about. What role do you think this bill plays in the future of other states passing similar legislation, the federal government maybe, and to Dr. Cooper's point early on in folks in this call participating? You said it's a breathing document. Folks can get involved. Tell us more about what the future looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still have a lot more work to do, Mason, right? Like we need to look at, how do we secure data that's being put into these systems, whether it's Blue Points data in the future, whether it's people putting into ChatGPT their personal information. I think one of the scary things that we see is that people with depression and women that have been sexually assaulted, that's a data set that you can actually purchase because companies want to be able to sell to those folks because they're more likely to impulse buy. We want to make sure that the work that we're doing and the work that the client our therapists are doing are not going to be sold. I think we've got some work to make sure that someone doesn't put their thumb on the scale on the algorithm, so that the things that are being the therapy notes that are being created or the treatment plans aren't weighted to benefit either venture capitalists or the insurance industry, et cetera. I think, we also have to look at efficiencies within the system. So it's great that we're able to do less paperwork and less, and we can see more clients, but we also got to make sure that we build in that time, that critical time to evaluate and to critically think about our clients and what their needs are. And on liability, I think that's another space that we've got to legally look at. I just don't think that people quite understand the liability risk that exists when we can subpoena your entire transcripts rather than just your therapy notes. And so there's some things that we have to look at. But I will say, like, the states are looking at that, right? Like New York is looking to replicate the Illinois bill right now. They've already working on drafts. I know of right now 11 states that have reached out to us that had some conversations about what it was, what the challenges were. And we're seeing it bipartisan. I mean, I think it's important to note that this bill passed bipartisan across the board, unanimous across the board in both chambers. So, from Trump Republicans to our socialist Democrats, all got on board to this bill. We're even seeing like folks like Ron DeSantis looking at some of this. So I think there's an opportunity. I think definitely clinicians need to get involved in that process. They need to inform that process. But I do think that a line in the sand needs to be drawn, and sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, extremely well said. And thank you for your leadership in drawing those lines. As I said, you're the person in the driver's seat. Nevada, you didn't give yourself credit, but I will. I'm sure you had a hand in that as well. And 11 states coming to you is a huge indication of not just your role in this, but also the nascent stage of regulation as well. Dr. Wood mentioned the technology being at just the beginning, but I can tell that the legislative activity is very early on as well, all pointing to the value and importance for folks on this call continuing to or becoming involved. We're coming up against the hour. I want to bring all of our panelists back and for just some final thoughts, and want to explore what it's like if we get this right. And so in one succinct sentence from each of you, I know it's a challenge. There's a lot to say here. What is it like if we get this right? What opportunities do you see with AI for clients and therapists? How could this meaningfully improve care or support therapists? It's a huge question, I realize. But around the horn, one sentence, maybe two, I'll be generous. Who wants to start us off?
I'll start off. Okay, if we get this right, I see AI being built as a tool and not a replacement for relationship. So I see it being built as something that everybody has access to, that is supportive, that is ethical, that has safety frameworks and guidelines with a gold standard of how to build this well, and that leads people into real life relationships and creates that kind of a loop. There you go.
Amazing. Amazing. Well done. Thank you.
I would say +1 to everything that Dr. Wood just said. I agree with all of that. And the opportunity that I see like two, so my two sentences. One is, as a field, we actually learn to sit in the gray a little bit and balance how do we scale up access and be able to provide quality care. I think no matter what your issues are with some of the technology, ChatGPT, we cannot deny if 50,000 more people have support for their mental health through ChatGPT, at the bare definition, that is access. And so that's 50,000 people that we may not have been supported that may live in rural areas. I also see this as an opportunity for us to really think about what does it mean in the mental health care space. I think sometimes when we overcorrected for stigma, everything feels like it's mental health. So how do we help people to say this is treatment and this is a support for you? Everything doesn't need treatment. The same way that you can get over-the-counter medication for a cold, but you see a doctor for pneumonia. You don't just always go to your doctor right away for the first sniffle. Like, I think this is an opportunity for the field and for people seeking treatment to really start to redefine what does mental health actually mean, and at what point do people need treatment?
Amazing distinctions, Dr. Jackson. Thank you.
I would like to throw in that I think if we get this thing right, I think it could radically change how we look at continuing education and how we look at how that's delivered, what is continuing education, how we learn. I'm really excited about that space. I know we didn't talk about it at all, but I really see the AI opportunity for us to get away from that just straight lecture model and then get to more of that interactive learning by through systems. And I think it's great. This is what I'm excited about.
I'll give you three
Wow.
words, Mason. More, better, faster, rather than two sentences. I think if we get it, it's like the internet. If we get it right, there's amazing things that can come up with it. There's also a lot of problems and challenges we're going to have to deal with. But again, having access to information and tools to help us live our lives better, treat our patients better, run our businesses better, if we get it right, I think can be a really good thing.
Amazing. This exceeded my expectations. You all provided such nuance and texture and detail, amazing distinctions, analogies, ran the gamut. So thank you all for that. One thing I'm taking away that I've touched on a couple times is the nascent stage of all of this, and the opportunity for clinicians not only to stay up to speed on the important topic, but to lead on it. And so I want to remind folks that today's conversation doesn't stop here. As I mentioned earlier, this event marks the official opening of our new therapist community, what we're calling Between Sessions. The Between Sessions community is designed to be a trusted space for mental health professionals to connect, share insight, and support one another. Specifically, it's a place to find live and free case consultation groups, business support, fresh peer-driven resources, and much, much more. We've added the chat to the link for y'all to sign up and join. Again, this is a trusted space for mental health professionals, There were about 1,000 folks on the waitlist to join, 50 of whom are already in there. They've been co-creating this space behind the scenes over the last few months, and they're eager to welcome the rest of you. We'll be posting a recap of what was shared today also, both by the panelists and by the audience. I think we'll do a tally of the chat poll that we did, the good, the bad, and the dangerous, or that messy middle, that gray area that Dr. Jackson nudged us to continue thinking about and living in. So you'll find that there. You'll also find in the community a petition we've launched to ban the marketing of unsupervised AI therapists and to keep humans at the center of care. I believe more than 1,200 folks have already signed the petition. If you haven't yet, would encourage you to take a look, read it closely, see if it's for you, and add your name if it is. And so I encourage you now, like right now, click over. We'll be wrapping up in just a couple minutes. The link is in the chat. Join the conversation. And want to remind you that today's topic, AI and therapy, is just one of many conversations. It's timely, it's obviously very popular and important, but it's just one of many we'll be having together in the community. So encourage you to join us there. I'm in there. We have a bunch of early community members in there, and we're really excited to welcome you. If you have any questions, I'm the community manager. You can email me, mason.smith@blueprint.ai. We'll add that to the chat as well. I want to give a huge thank you to our panelists and speakers today. So grateful to have you here. Amazing contributions, such leaders in policy, the clinical field, in helping us really grapple with this like amazingly large new frontier. So thank you very much for your time and for your contributions, and to our audience for all of your input as well. We're going to close this in just a minute, so click over to the community and continue the conversation. Thank you all very much again for joining, and we'll see you in there. Take care, everybody.